Our guest on the podcast this week is someone who has not just pushed boundaries in the space industry, but also defied gravity in the process. We're speaking with Susan Kilrain. Starting her journey with her private pilot's license at age 17, Susan has navigated an incredible career path. Despite being denied a place in the Air Force because they'd fulfilled their annual quota of women, she went on to become a distinguished American aerospace engineer, United States Navy officer, and NASA astronaut. Susan's record as the youngest person to ever pilot a space shuttle, being one of only 3 women, still stands today. She has over 3,000 hours flight time under her belt and was the recipient of the Defense Superior Service Medal. Yet, Susan's impact isn't confined to her achievements in air and space. She is also a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion and a firm believer in the importance of education, encouragement, and removing barriers for the next generation of the space industry. Stay tuned as we dive into Susan's inspiring journey, breaking barriers on Earth and beyond. Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
Going?
Good.
Yeah, glad to hear. Really excited to be speaking with you. Thanks so much for joining me. Really excited to kind of get into your space origin story. I know you've had such an incredible career with some really exciting kind of projects and missions that you've been that you've been a part of. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of get back to the very beginning and hear about where you started and what kind of inspired you to to pursue the amazing career that you've enjoyed over the years.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Me too. Right then. Well, as we do with all of our guests, let's start at the very beginning, if that's okay. So, talk us through kind of where you started in life, where you grew up, school, college, and then your early career.
So I grew up in a small town or out, not small now, but Augusta, Georgia. I was one of 4. I had 3 brothers. And, we didn't have a lot. So my dad used to take us to the airport to watch the airplanes take off and land for entertainment. And that's where I fell in love with the idea of becoming a pilot. And that developed into wanting to fly in space, mainly because I wanted to fly lots of different airplanes and lots of different things. And so I got my private pilot's license when I was 17 and
Oh,
went on to a university to get a degree in aeronautical engineer and then got a job with Lockheed Corporation in Atlanta. And didn't really enjoy being an engineer so much. I thought it was kind of boring. So, an astronaut that my boss knew suggested that I join the military. And meanwhile, I got my master's degree in aerospace engineering from Georgia Tech. And once that was done, I looked into joining the military. The Air Force wouldn't take me because they said they had fulfilled their quota of women for the year, women pilots. That was the first time
oh
I
my
been
God.
told no because I was a woman. I didn't realize that was even a thing. And so somebody suggested I look into the Navy. And I didn't know that the Navy even had airplanes, but I found out that it had a wonderful flight program and so off I went to the Navy.
Yeah. Wow. That's their loss. That is shocking. I bet they're kicking themselves now that that they turned you away. That's amazing though. It seems like you just knew what you wanted to do. Well, obviously, you said you didn't enjoy engineering as much, but getting your private pilot's license at 17, that I'm not sure of how that normally goes, but it's amazing. That seems very young to be an amazing kind of accomplishment to get at that age. But you clearly had a dream that you wanted to pursue, and I think that's so many kind of young people's dream is to be an astronaut. But I think the difference is, that you actually, really put it into practice and really kind of followed a path that would take you there. And, you've had such an incredible career that I'm really looking forward to kind of delving more into. But so now that you're kind of really embedded into the industry and you've had all these amazing experiences, what is it specifically that you love the most about space and the space industry?
I love everything about space. People often ask, what do you think about all the privatization of going into space? And I think any space travel is good for the planet. Everybody that goes into space comes back with a new perspective on the Earth and a new respect for how fragile Earth is and the atmosphere is. And so it's for me, anybody that the more people that go into space, the better, as long as they can do it safely. And so I just, I love everything about space flight. Now I'm not flying anymore. So I spend my time mentoring kids or young people, or I'm part of a organization called STEM Punks that goes around the world and introduces STEM skills to kids, and it has a space base theme to it, and so that's been very rewarding for me.
That's amazing. I love to, to hear about kind of the kind of advocacy work you're doing in the industry for STEM, because it's so important to kind of get these young children and these young people involved in kind of a hands-on way from a young age. Because I think that, as you said about kind of, having a new respect for the earth and, the different perspective that kind of space travel gives you, I think that people are quite quick to kind of minimize the industry to only space travel, and they think it's just for the fun of it, and because we just want to go as far as we can to see what we're capable of. But I think a lot of people kind of don't realize the huge amount of the industry that is focused on improving life on earth. And I think that it's really important to kind of have these conversations and to kind of demystify the industry and what it's really all about, because that's kind of really the main reason why we started the podcast anyway, is to demystify space and make it more accessible. Because a really hot topic which we've already touched on a couple of times is diversity in the industry, and the stats which are improving. I think sometimes I get a bit of pushback on that, and I was told that the figures are worse than they were in the 70s, which I'm going to look into a bit more. But we're really just trying to, push this focus on inspiring young children and making it more accessible for everyone, because, that's something that you're clearly really passionate about yourself, and you're really going out there and doing it. So as kind of a leader in the industry and someone that's really pushing this, accessibility in STEM and opening people's eyes up to the industry and kind of the possibilities that are available, I'm sure you're going to have some great ideas on this. What do you feel that we could be doing differently across the industry, and obviously at this STEM and potentially STEAM level, if you want to start bringing the arts into it, to impact change and to kind of ensure that we're getting the talent we need for the next generation of the sector?
I think there are a lot of initiatives out there, and to ensure that everyone, one, is educated in the opportunity, is encouraged. My father, way back when I was a young teenager, he was the pivotal person in my life. And when I went to him to tell him I wanted to be an astronaut, thankfully he said, "That's great. You can be anything you want to be." And he never discouraged me. He never said, "But you're a girl." Um, Back then, of course, there were no women astronauts, and I didn't
Um,
even know any women that did anything other than the traditional female roles. But it never occurred to me, because the people close to me never, said you can't do it. They may have been thinking it, but they never said it. And I think that's important, that we not discourage anyone from their dreams. Let people go out, and if they don't make it, that's okay. It's that's an important learning tool as well. But if you straight out say you can't play basketball because you're too short, then it's possible they may not go out and seek their dream, So that's where it starts. It starts in the communities, in the homes, not discouraging kids, letting them go out and find out what their possibilities are. And so if we could even just spread that one little word, that would be amazing. I think that more and more everything is opening up to pretty much anyone, but this is a time of strife. There's a lot going on, and we need to work through this so that everyone feels comfortable doing whatever it is they want to do. And I think you were saying maybe it's worse now than it was back in the 70s. I think there's a lot more going on now than there was
Mm.
in the 70s. You never heard about, LBTG. You never heard about any. There were men, there were women, there were whites, there were blacks, but there's a whole bunch more out there now. And so, yes, we hear about it a lot more now, but we also did in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and even into the 80s. And yes, women still have issues in the workplace for sure. There's not equal pay. There's not equal opportunity, yet. But we're working there. We're on a good trajectory, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that we are, on the right trajectory. I think that, people are having the conversations and they're asking the difficult questions, around things like pay and the inequalities that stem from that. And, it's seemingly stemming from a time that we all seem to be saying that we're past. But when you look at the stats, it's, we still have some way to go. But I completely agree with you that we're on the right track. So excited to see how it kind of develops in the coming years. And I really loved your answer to that question in that it starts with community and it starts at home, because I think a huge thing, which is a massive barrier to entry, is people saying no to themselves before they've even tried and giving themselves 1,000 reasons why they can't do the job. And I know that I've looked into some research and this is quite specific to women. And it's really interesting if you look at studies on how men and women respond internally to job adverts, where it's been, I'm not, this isn't my opinion, this is something that's genuinely been said out there, is that women are more likely to kind of tell themselves reasons they might not be qualified and they don't meet 100% of the criteria, but men have been said to be more self-assured because that's kind of what they've been given by society historically, is that self-assurance and that I can do it, I can 100% accomplish that. But I think you're completely right, is that if we give these young children the confidence to pursue their genuine dreams, because the dreams you have as a child, if you can give someone the tools to really go on and pursue that dream, I think that's the most incredible gift you can ever give someone. And I really agree with what you said about not making it being okay, because it's such an important learning tool and a learning curve to learn from your mistakes. And this is actually something that we do like to touch on with our guests, is kind of in the interest of, as I've spoken about before, is demystifying the industry and kind of really highlighting the entire journey and the ups and the downs and the bumps that people hit in the road. But then more importantly, how they kind of navigated these obstacles. So we like to kind of discuss failures and achievements with our guests, because we don't think that a lot of time people are transparent enough about that. And that, I think, can be a huge turn off to people who are thinking, oh, I'd love to work in the space industry, but it's so intimidating. It's really daunting. And look at all these engineers and these astronauts. And that could just never be me, because I'm at my first step now and I could never be there. So in your career journey so far, what would you say is the kind of biggest learning curve that you've experienced? What did you take from that? And then on a more positive note, what is your biggest career achievement to date?
Oh, wow. I have failed. I have failed many times, and there are a few times even I skirted close to disaster. And um, like when I was after I had gotten my private pilot's license, and I was going to take my brother and his girlfriend and somebody else on a flight, and it was the first time I had had people in the back seat, which totally changes your center of gravity. And when I took off, I rotated the normal way that I always had, not accounting for the extra weight in the back seat. I almost stalled right after takeoff and crashed and killed us all. So um, that was a huge learning curve for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, it all worked out all right, and I'm pretty sure my brother and his girlfriend never knew how close they were to
Oh.
dying that day. um, and then even further on, my last simulator in the shuttle training, before we were supposed to go into flight, I made a major failure and as a pilot, and we crashed and died right before you're supposed to go into orbit. And there was discussions among the higher up echelon as to whether or not we were ready and what to do about it. And I was professionally embarrassed. I was doubting myself, and it all worked out fine, but I really had to set aside those doubts. And what you were saying about men and women, when they look at a job application or a job description, you're right. Men typically look at, oh, well, I meet 30% of the requirements, I'm going to apply for the job. And women are like, oh, well, I'm 6 months short of the whatever. And so then they don't apply. And I tell my girls, I said, look, you meet half of those things. Get on it.
Mm.
Just apply. They can say no, but every job application you fill out or every interview you do, that's more experience. So it's a win, regardless of whether you get the job. You have won, you have had the opportunity to apply and interview, and then you've also increased your ability to, because it's nerve-wracking to go out there and look for a job, and women do often doubt ourselves, and you just gotta put on the big girl pants and go out and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. God, that is definitely a learning curve, I think. But it's really inspirational how you kind of, because I think it's such a huge responsibility, being a pilot of an aircraft and of a spacecraft even more so. And there are lives at stake, obviously, because it's massive and it is a huge responsibility. But regardless of their, it being potentially life threatening if it goes wrong, we need these kind of skilled professionals to do it. And I'm sure there's the majority of people in that position. I can't imagine everyone's had a completely smooth ride the entire time. But it's about not, if you focus in on that kind of doubt that stems from something that potentially went wrong, I think it's just going to maximize, and it's going to kind of manifest into this huge thing that's just going to become a massive barrier. So, if you'd have after that said, "Oh God, I nearly killed some people. I'm done. I'm going to go work in a different industry," then we wouldn't be having this conversation today, and you wouldn't have all these incredible kind of stories and anecdotes to tell.
Yeah, I think it's important to examine what happened, forgive yourself for what
Yeah.
happened, admit your part in the near disaster or the failure or whatever. Admit it, learn from it, and then set it aside. And compartmentalization is a huge part of being a pilot, being an astronaut. Whatever's going on in your life or whatever failures you have had, you've got to put those in a different compartment of your brain and focus on the job, and not let those things distract you from what you have to do to succeed.
Well, completely. I feel like if you don't compartmentalize those things, it's hard, yeah, easier said than done sometimes, but they'll just end up ruling your life. If you can't find a little box somewhere in the vault in the back of your brain to put them into, then they're just going to kind of eat away at you. So on the other side of that, what's your biggest achievement in your career to date, would you say?
Oh, biggest achievement in my career. Wow.
So
In my
many.
career. I mean, obviously, flying in space was the huge moment.
Mm.
I think that I got into NASA on my first application cycle, so that seemed kind of easy.
Wow.
It took me 3 applications to get into test pilot school for the Navy. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I needed to wait for a new commanding officer to become in charge because the previous one wasn't really big on women aviators, women pilots. So um, I, I applied when I was eligible, but it took me 3 times. So that was a huge challenge to overcome. But then getting into NASA, although I didn't think I would be selected, I thought for sure of the 3 women pilots that interviewed, I thought I was the least likely to get selected because of my age, because of my rank, and I never dreamed they would take 2 women pilots at one time. And they did. They took one from the Air Force and me. Um, I would say for all the people, all the women out there that have a career and a family, raising kids is way harder than flying in space. I have 4, so I definitely consider them my greatest accomplishment. Although
Oh,
it's
that's lovely.
not your true career, nobody's paying me to do it. But for me, I think it's like flying 4 different airplanes at the same time without a checklist. Uh, and now I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. I'm the oddest thing that I'm doing is I'm a partner in a venture capital group, and
Wow.
and this is totally out of my wheelhouse. So when you talk about not meeting all the requirements for a job description, this would be one.
Yeah.
But it's been fascinating, and I'm learning a lot about what venture capital is, and I'm getting to meet and talk with a bunch of startups, young companies that are in the tech world. So that's kind of nice.
That's really interesting. How did you, I know you said it's not in your wheelhouse. What changed? How did you kind of transition into that?
I was invited. I was asked if I would take part, mainly because a lot of the young companies involve space and aviation, and so they wanted someone with expertise in that realm to be involved. And I agreed. I thought this would be fascinating, and it has, but it has so much. I mean, yes, it does have to do with tech and whatnot, but it has a lot more to do with um, people. When you're considering a small company for investment, you want to know who the people are, who's working there, and what are their thoughts and their dreams, and it's been really fascinating.
Mm. I can imagine. I think that's a really, really important thing as well, that it's not just how you said it's not just about the tech, it's about the people. And I think that's also a huge thing that, it's a really hot topic in the industry is kind of the amalgamation of all of these skills and bringing so many people with different kind of backgrounds and experiences and opinions and so many different things like qualifications, what you've done previously in your roles, because we need all these different kind of diverse backgrounds and points of view to drive things forward and for them to expand and progress past where people, if we'd all grown up in the same small village and never left, if we all started, a company, I think that if we ran into some hurdles, we might not have the tools to overcome them because we all kind of have our brains and our mindsets and our points of view and our life experiences have all been really similar. So I think that's really interesting, and that's really great to hear that you're kind of the way that you're kind of branching out and lending your kind of expertise across new industries now, and people who are coming, starting these incredible companies and these startups who are going to go on to do these incredible things that I'm sure we can't even imagine in the years to come. So that's really, really exciting to be a part of. And I do also think that juggling 4 children is does come into career achievements because you're doing that alongside all of these incredible kind of opportunities and these initiatives that you're a part of and the work that you're doing. I think that is something really key. And when we have women on here that we speak to that are, leaders in the industry, that is something that always does come up, is about being a mother alongside that, and also kind of how it's changed over the years. It's really interesting to kind of hear
women saying that when they kind of, that it was, it was kind of almost viewed as, seems to have been viewed as a barrier before, but, it seems that women, as they're coming into these leadership roles, and the imposter syndrome, the voice in the back of the head is kind of diminishing and getting a bit quieter. You're compartmentalizing that voice, and then they're standing up for themselves and saying, no, I am a mother, but I'm also all of the other incredible things that I am professionally that you need me for. So I'm going to do both, and maybe I will bring my child to work with me if I have to, but I'm still going to get the job done. And I think that is something really kind of key that I think has definitely kind of played a part in changing the way that kind of women are viewed in the industry, and the role that people kind of seem to sometimes minimize women to, and think that that's all, that's it, and that's all you can do, and you can't have any kind of anything outside of that. So it's really great to kind of, I really love that you parceled that into your greatest career achievement. Um, so Susan, we're coming to kind of our penultimate question now. So it's been so amazing to kind of hear about your journey, and what you've learned along the way and what inspired you. And we like to end by kind of combining everything together and almost reflecting in a way to give some really tangible advice to the people that we've hopefully inspired to kind of pursue new horizons and maybe expand their mind to what they could maybe achieve. I think a really key part of this is kind of understanding people who have been successful in their career, kind of understanding what resources that they identified and utilized over the years were. So whether that's courses, programs, mentors, I think mentors and people are always a huge kind of part of this. What would you say you found the most valuable in your kind of career journey?
Mm. Well, first I'll say, you brought up imposter syndrome. I might have done all of these things, but I still have imposter syndrome. I think a majority of women do. It's not listening to it. That's
Hmm.
the key. It's just ignoring it and jumping in with both feet and educating yourself and doing the absolute best that you can, with that's all anybody can ever do. And mentorship is huge. There weren't any women doing what I was doing back when I was joining the Navy and flying for the Navy. All of my mentors were men, and they were amazing. I still talk to some of them now, and these were men that could see the value of me for myself, not because I was a woman, but they advocated for me, they advised me, they helped me, they made phone calls on my behalf, which was wonderful, and they made it possible to ignore the folks that didn't want me there, the men that didn't think women should be there, and stuff during that whole time when I was in the Navy, really. And when I got to NASA, it seemed to me like a breath of fresh air because NASA had already integrated women in, and Eileen Collins had already been the first space shuttle pilot. So I wasn't having to break any glass ceilings or anything. I was just kind of trying to skirt through the shards of broken glass that were still remaining, and that was a little bit easier. So I would say mentors, and back along with family, work balance, and all of that. I stopped working for over a decade um, because my husband's career and my career, it wasn't possible for both of us to have those careers at the same time and have children and live together. That was not even possible because he was a Navy SEAL, and so something had to give. But if you're going to take a chunk of time out, like I did, stay in the game somehow. Take classes, take now with all the online opportunities, take classes, join professional groups, and stay in the game, because at some point you're going to have to write a resume on the backside that shows what you've been doing in that decade you took off. So, and it's good for you too. It's good for your mental state to have something outside of the family and the children. So, stay in the game. But doubling all the way back to the beginning of when we talked about getting people all types involved, and I do think it's hugely important. Just want to give a big plug for my children's book coming out this fall called An Unlikely Astronaut. And basically, it is about you can be anything you want to be. It was about how I was the most unlikeliest of astronauts growing up, and so it's a way to encourage young kids. This is a young children's book. It's a way to encourage young kids to dream.
Amazing. I've definitely heard of that. I've heard the title of that book. That really struck a light bulb in my head when you said that. That is so my niche. I'm going to be reading that. As someone who works in the space industry and studied children's literature at university, that sounds like an absolute dream. So is that coming out, or is that already out?
September.
September.
But you can see it on like Amazon. It's already out there as far as advanced purchase or whatever, but it's not being released until September.
Okay, well, I'll get my pre-order in and I'll have something to look forward to when
And
summer's
the
coming to a close.
illustrator, let me tell you, the illustrator's from the UK, and she's never done anything like this. And I think that the illustrations are amazing. I think I'm so fascinated with what she's done to make it come alive.
I'm sure I will be too. I love it, illustrations in children's books. There's just something so kind of magical about that, I think. And they really, even as an adult, I find they almost transport me when it kind of takes me back to childhood. So yeah, so I think especially when it's kind of space themed. Oh, very excited for that to arrive. I'll be ordering that when we're just after this episode. That's great. Oh, that's really exciting. Yeah, that's going to be, I think that's a really, coming from someone, it's almost kind of, biographical, really, in a way, isn't it? She's kind of, it's based off you. So that's, I think it's a really kind of great way to use your position and experience to drive your passion for advocacy for kind of, inspiring young people and young women and girls to kind of pursue these careers in STEM. So yeah, that's incredible. I can't wait to kind of give that one a read. Sounds great. And
As
I
a
really,
cheap plug for my book here.
no, it's perfect though. It's a great place to do it. It really kind of aligns with, we always talk about STEM and children on here and how we can get them inspired. And, we've had Nicole Stott on here, who I'm sure you
Mhm.
know of. And she, we were speaking about kind of art and, I'm sure, she's quite involved in, the intersection of art and STEM and space. So it's, it is so key, and it's something we've spoken about in the past, and how can we engage young people? How could you be more engaged than an illustrated picture children's book about space? I think that's, something really to get in kind of early, to really kind of start shaping minds in the right way. And it's really great to kind of hear, just kind of going back to the early part of your answer, about the male allies that were your mentors over the years, that were giving you kind of a leg up, as you said, and kind of helping you to kind of intersect your way into the industry, where others may have been looking to kind of clip your wings and say no for X, Y, and Z horrible, invalid reason, which, as I said earlier, I'm sure they're kicking themselves now, and so they should be. And absolutely with, staying in the game with the online classes. There's so many even free resources, even just subscribing to something like Space News or EVONA's space blogs. Plug ourselves there. There's so many kind of outlets out there where you can keep up to date with these exciting industry developments, and as you said, kind of stay in the game, and just stay involved in the incredible things that are going on in this industry. So no, I think that's a perfect answer. And so just kind of coming on to our closing question, this is a great one because it's just a really great kind of closing comment to give to anyone listening who is feeling a bit inspired and maybe feeling a bit more brave than they were maybe earlier today. So in kind of a closing kind of conclusion to the conversation, what advice would you give to someone from either a technical or a non-technical background who is looking to enter into the space industry?
Mm. I would say, one, commit yourself to it. And but for me, the most important thing I tell everyone who wants to someday go into space is to enjoy the journey. whatever path it is that you take to get there, you want to enjoy the journey, because it is a long journey and you may not ever get to your destination. So you really want to enjoy the journey. And this comes back to me starting out as an engineer. And I didn't enjoy being an engineer, but I still wanted to be an astronaut. So I needed to find a way to become an astronaut while at the same time doing something that I loved. And that was, naval aviation. Even if you don't want to go into space, but you want to be in some aspect of space, enjoy the journey. If you are an artist, figure out a way to apply that to what it is you want to be, because you want to love the journey. That's what it's all about. It took me, decades to get to space after the dream, became a reality, became in my brain. And so enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. I think that's actually very insightful, I think, because, when you have this goal and when it's especially the dream of going to space, that is such kind of stemming from childhood quite usually. And it's such a huge lifelong dream. And I think that I think that this can apply to anything though. If you really have your sights set on that kind of end goal, you're not going to have time to stop and smell the flowers, and you're going to miss the amazing stops that are on the way. And you never know, as if you actually stopped and had a look around at where you are at that moment. There's so many people around you and kind of pieces of information that you could absorb, and these incredible things that you could be a part of that could in themselves shape your journey, and maybe even shape the end result, and build it into something that you never even knew was possible, and something that is an amalgamation of all of these different things. I think that even with myself, when I studying English, I knew I wanted to write, but I never said, oh, I want to write for this specific industry. I just knew I wanted to write, and I just went along doing jobs, just doing what I loved, saying yes to opportunities, seeing what's out there as I go. And look at me now. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Who would
Yeah,
have
I
thought
think
it?
that, if for me, if I would have never become an astronaut, it would have been okay, because I loved being a Navy pilot. So it would have been okay. And now I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to be an astronaut, and that was the ultimate goal and dream for me. But I was loving the journey.
Mm. It sounds like an incredible journey, starting from, very young, you seem to realize your dream, 17 years old, getting what was it? What pilot license? What's the word that I'm missing?
Private pilot's license.
Thank you. The private pilot's license, that really, kind of set the stage for, just the way you kind of kept going. And then, it was at first it was aircraft, and you were doing so well and succeeding and loving what you were doing and making all these amazing connections. And then it took you all the way to space.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, amazing, incredible journey. And I think that's a really kind of great closing comment, as I said, to kind of hopefully inspire people out there to, ignore that voice in their head, compartmentalize all the negative things that you've absorbed over the years. If it's something that someone else has told you, if it's something that you're telling yourself, it has no use. It's only going to stunt your development and kind of keep you from saying yes to amazing opportunities and seeking out those opportunities. So do not be the one to say no to yourself. And you never know where it'll take you.
You never know.
You never know. Well, Susan, that is the end of the show, but I have so enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to, come on here and chat with me and tell me about your story and give some really amazing pieces of advice that I think could make a real difference to some of the listeners.
No, thank you. I've loved talking with you as well. And I look forward to seeing the podcast.
Yes, me too. Well, the pleasure's been all mine. I'll let you know when that's going live. But yeah, really looking forward to it. Thanks so much for joining me, Susan.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye.